Hello and welcome to Right Sports Talk. My name is Zach. We have made it through 3 weeks of the UFL season. In week 3, I went 1-3 with my predictions, giving me an overall record of 7-5. Let's get into these game picks for week 4. Week 4 kicks off Friday night, April 18th, as the Memphis Showboats, who are 0-3, take on the Michigan Panthers, who are 2-1. Memphis is coming off a loss to the Houston Roughnecks. Michigan is coming off of a win over the San Antonio Brahmas. My pick for this game is going to be the Michigan Panthers. So these are two teams that played each other, just a few weeks ago in week 1. And I think in that game, Michigan got the victory because they were able to get some turnovers and kind of pressure E.J. Perry and Troy Williams, the quarterbacks for the Memphis Showboats. I think this game could go very similar because Memphis their offense has been good at moving the ball downfield. Their wide receiver Jonathan Adams leads the league in receiving yards. However, they have a big turnover problem, especially with their quarterbacks throwing interceptions. It's mainly been E.J. Perry the last couple weeks. Troy Williams did go in the second half of this game against Houston, where he didn't throw any interceptions, but he also made some bad throws that wound up with them not being able to complete the victory, and wound up with them losing. But so in this game, I really think that Michigan's defense will be able to do what it did week 1. I think they're going to be able to pressure whoever they have at quarterback for Memphis, whether it is E.J. Perry or Troy Williams. I think they're probably going to be able to get some turnovers. And I think offensively, I think Michigan, I think they should keep riding with Bryce Perkins as their main quarterback. This past week, Danny Etling started for them, and he actually got knocked out with an injury. And then Bryce Perkins came in, and he played very well. He has played very well all season when he's gotten the opportunity. But Michigan has kept flip-flopping quarterbacks. I think they should just go with Bryce Perkins and stick with him. Because he's playing much better than Danny Etling is right now. And against San Antonio, he had a pretty good game with passing and especially running the ball. He had 2 rushing touchdowns in that game against San Antonio. So I just think that because of their ability to get pressure and the fact that Memphis has a turnover problem, I do think that Michigan gets the victory against the Showboats. Now, moving on to Saturday, April 19th, you actually have 2 games on Saturday. The first game, you have the St. Louis Battlehawks, who are 2-1, taking on the Arlington Renegades, who are also 2-1. St. Louis is coming off of a loss to the DC Defenders, and Arlington is coming off of a loss to the Birmingham Stallions. So these are 2 teams that are both coming off their first loss of the season. So I'm excited to see how they react and how they bounce back. There's 2 teams that, for St. Louis, their offense, especially in the run game, they very much struggled against DC. They couldn't really get anything going. Quarterback Manny Wilkins was their leading rusher, and he only had about 40 yards rushing. Jacob Sailors had a good game in the receiving game with a lot of yards, but they couldn't get the run game going. And then I believe they turned the ball over 4 times. I saw Manny Wilkins throw at least 2 pretty bad interceptions that wound up being big difference makers in what wound up being a 12-point ball game. There was one point they were driving down the field. They were within field goal range, down by 3, and on 3rd down, Manny Wilkins rolls out and throws the ball across his body and right into traffic and gets intercepted. Hopefully they can kind of clean that up going into this week and kind of figure out how to get their run game going again. And for the Arlington Renegades, they're a team that their offense that looked so good week 1 has kind of struggled a little bit the past 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, week 2 against Houston, they got off to a very slow start. And this week against Arlington, they only scored 9 points. They lost that game by a point because Birmingham was able to drive down the field and get the game-winning touchdown, an extra point right at the end of the game. So we need to see if Arlington can get something going with their, with Luis Perez, who is still a very talented quarterback, but also with their run game that started the season so hot, but has kind of fallen off the past couple weeks. As for my pick for this game, I am going to go with the Battlehawks, just because even when their offense has not played very well, they have still looked better than Arlington has looked the past couple weeks. And defensively, the Battlehawks defense played very well against DC. They had a few times where they should have had interceptions, which should have wound up winning them the game. But they had some dropped interceptions right at the end of the game where the defenders scored a touchdown to really cement their lead. There was a pass that got batted down and bounced up off of one defender player into the arms of another one for a touchdown. So, very crazy play. So I think with how strong their defense looked, hopefully they can, get a couple, capitalize on some of their opportunities for turnovers. And hopefully on offense, they can limit their turnovers and try to figure out how to get their run game going again. So I do think that the St. Louis Battlehawks get the victory here. Now, your second game on Saturday, you have the Birmingham Stallions, who are 2-1, taking on the Houston Roughnecks, who are 1-2. Birmingham coming off that win over the Arlington Renegades, in which their offense couldn't really get anything going for most of that game until really their final drive in the fourth quarter, where they were able to drive down and get that game-winning touchdown. And Houston is coming off of their first victory of the season over Memphis, in which for the first half of that game, their offense really struggled and they couldn't really get anything going. And for the second half, they wound up making a QB change. They took out Anthony Brown and they put in Nolan Henderson, who he played very well in the second half of that game, going 10 for 11 on his passes with 80 yards and a touchdown. That was the big difference in a very close game. Which I know, 80 yards passing doesn't sound like a whole lot, but that was double what Anthony Brown did in the first half. I think, it looks like Nolan Henderson is going to be Houston's quarterback going forward. They also, on offense, have, Marcus Sims, who they traded for from Michigan before, last week, who should continue to improve as he spends more time in that offense. Obviously, they still have Justin Hall, who's a very good receiver. Defensively, Houston has actually improved a lot since week one against St. Louis, where they got run all over. They've done a very good job of slowing down the run. However, I am going to go with the Birmingham Stallions in this game. I think that although Matt Corral does make some mistakes, he throws some passes that he probably shouldn't that get intercepted. I think he's still a very talented quarterback. They're still a very talented team. I think defensively, they should be able to, slow down this offense for Houston. I think they can really get after Nolan Henderson, really pressure him, see how well he does under pressure. And Houston having a good run defense doesn't really hurt Birmingham this week, because Birmingham hasn't had the best run offense this season. So I think Matt Corral should be able to make enough plays with his arm and being able to run around as the mobile quarterback that he is, to extend plays and keep plays alive with his legs. So I think offensively, this Birmingham team can do enough to get a lead, and I think their defense should be able to hold on to that lead and keep Houston from scoring a lot of points. Would I be surprised if Houston got the win? No, especially like this season 2 of the UFL. A lot of these teams are very close in terms of talent and just ability overall on the team, and it really looks like any team could beat any other team in this league right now. But I do think that Birmingham will get the victory over the Houston Roughnecks. Your final game of the weekend, you have on Sunday, the April 20th, you have the San Antonio Brahmas, who are 0-3, taking on the DC Defenders, who are 3-0. San Antonio is coming off of a very close loss to the Michigan Panthers in a game in which their offense looked the best it has all season. They put up 23 points. Destroying started off the game 3 for 3 with field goals, including a 55-yarder. Unfortunately for them, he missed the game winner, which was a 53-yard attempt. That was missed, that caused them to lose by 3 points. And their offense continued to struggle once they got near the red zone, where they had to settle for 2 field goals instead of being able to get touchdowns. And this DC Defenders team is coming off of a victory over the St. Louis Battlehawks, in which their defense was really the talk. They forced 4 turnovers. They suffocated that run game of the St. Louis Battlehawks. They were able to pressure Manny Wilkins, and really offensively, Jordan Ta'amu just had to make enough plays to win. Because he did not play great against St. Louis. He had a bunch of plays where he missed open receivers, had times where he should have thrown an interception, one of which would have probably been a pick six, but it was dropped by the defense for St. Louis. Their run game looked pretty good against the Battlehawks. But offensively, they did struggle a little bit, but their defense kind of picked up the slack for them. For this game, I am going to pick the DC Defenders, however, because as much as their offense had struggles against St. Louis, they found a way to get the win. And defensively, I think they're going to really get after this San Antonio offense. I think they're going to be able to really pressure Kellen Mond, as this defense has been able to pressure quarterbacks the first 3 weeks of the season. I think they're should be able to slow down this run game as well of the San Antonio Brahmas. Their run game hasn't really been going all that well. Though Anthony McFarland has had a good couple weeks catching the ball out of the backfield, not so much rushing. But I do think they find a way to kind of slow McFarland and Mon down. And I think they can, again, do enough on offense against the San Antonio defense to take a lead and hold on to it and get the victory. So that's who I have winning each game this weekend. I am most excited for the Battlehawks Renegades game, because it's going to be exciting to see which team coming off their first loss bounces back and finds a way to not maybe not start a losing streak. Let me know in the comments what you guys are excited for, who you guys think are going to win. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Until next time, see ya.